Hello everyone and welcome to Majestically Explanation. What we have discussed in our last video, we have seen law of supply, elasticity of supply and its practical application, and we have seen market equilibrium and what market equilibrium plays a role. In this video, we are going to see production, factor of production, production functions, and short-run production and long-run productions, and we are going to end our module. Production is the process of combining various material input and immaterial inputs in order to make something for consumption. It is the act of creating an output, a good or service which has value and contribute to the utility of individuals. The area of economics that focuses on production is referred to as production theory, which is intertwined with the consumption or consumer theory of economics. Factor of production. What are factor of productions? Factor of production are the input needed for creating a good service, and factor of production include land, labor, entrepreneurship, and capital. As I have given some examples, you can easily understand what are the factor of production. In upcoming slides, I will be explaining. How factor of production work? The modern definition of factor of production is primarily derived from a neoclassical view of economics. It amalgamates part approaches to economic theory, such as the concept of labor as a factor of production, from socialism into a single definition. Labor, land, and capital as factor of production were originally identified by early political economists such as Adam Smith, David Ricardo, and Karl Marx. Now, our first factor is land as a factor. Land has a broad definition as a factor of production and can take on various forms, from agricultural land to commercial real estate to the resources available from a particular piece of land. Cultivation of crops on a land by a farmer increases its value and utility. While land is an essential component of most ventures, its importance can diminish or increase based on industry. This is our first factor. Now, coming to second factor, which is labor as a factor. Labor refers to the effort extended by an individual to bring a product or service to the market. Again, it can take on various forms. For example, the construction worker at hotel site is part of labor, as the waiter who serves guests or the receptionist who enrolls them into the hotel. For the early political economists, labor was the primary driver of economic value. Labor play an important role. Production workers are paid for their time and effort in wages that depends on their skills and training. Labor by uneducated and untrained worker is typically paid low prices. Countries that are rich in human capital experience increased productivity and efficiency. The difference in skill level and terminology also helps companies and entrepreneurs create corresponding disparities in pay scales. These are the factors. Now, capital as a factor. In economics, capital typically refers to money. Instead, it facilitates the process used in production by enabling entrepreneurs and company owners to purchase capital goods or land to pay wages. For modern mainstream economists, capital is the primary driver for value. It is important to distinguish personal and private capital in factor of production. This is our fourth factor of production. A person vehicle used to transport family is not considered as capital good, but a commercial vehicle used expressly for official purposes is. During an economic contraction or when the suffer losses, companies cut back on capital expenditure to ensure profit. Entrepreneurship as a factor, which is our last factor of production. Entrepreneurship is the secret cause that combines all the other factor of production into a product or service for the consumer market. Mark Zuckerberg assumed the risk of success or failure of his social media network when he began allocating time with his daily schedule towards that activity. When he coded the minimum viable product himself, Zuckerberg labor was the only factor of production. He hired two people, an engineer and a spoken person, who both allocated hour to the project, meaning that their invested time became a factor of production. The continued popularity of the product meant that Zuckerberg also had to scale technology and operations. Zuckerberg This is an example of Zuckerberg labor operations. Now production function in one variable, two variable and all variable we will see. In economics theory, we are considered with three types of production function. Production function with one variable input, production function with two variable input, production function with all variables input. And we will going to see it our upcoming videos, or I will be explaining this all the topics in separate videos. Now, what is the types of production? How many types of production are there? There are two types of productions are there: short run productions and long run production. I will be explaining these things in this particular video, so be there for last. What is short-run production? Based on the name alone, you may assume that short-run production is a similarly a shorter production cycle than its long counterpart. However, short-run production actually has a different meaning. The term short-run production refers to a production cycle in which at least one factor is fixed. Most companies have multiple factors that they use produce goods or service, also known as input factors. They can consist of labor material, equipment, capital, and real property. Some of these factors may remain fixed, meaning they won't change throughout the course of production. Other factors may fluctuate in short-term production. At least one of these factors remain fixed. There are so many examples of short-term production. Now coming to long run production on the other hand occurs when all factors of production fluctuate regardless of which factor of a company uses to produce its good or service. They are considered variable factor in long run production. Companies can't accurately predict how many units of each input factor they will consume. Long run production involves the exclusive use of variable factors that can fluctuate. In many cases, short-term production cycle have a shorter length than longer-run production cycle. Many companies perform short-run production in a period of 6 months or less. In comparison, long-run production may extend anywhere from 6 months to 1 year. It's important to note that short-run and long-run aren't the one type of production cycle. They are also a very long-run production. For example, of a short-run production, we can say very long run production occur when both the internal and external factor of production fluctuate. It doesn't just take into account a company internal factor, it looks at external factor as well. Regularly changes, for instance, are considered an external factor. In long run production, a change of regulation is something that's outside of a company. In conclusion, short-term production and long-term production both involve the use of input factor. In short-term production, at least one of the factors is fixed. In long-term production, none of the factors are factors. Instead, long-term production uses variables that can fluctuate or change in future. You can have an example of short-term production, like whenever we play Holi or whenever there is a festival Diwali, we used to buy crackers. There are the examples of short-term production. Thanks for watching, guys.